Hello, everyone. Hello, Derek. So, just quick introductions. I'm Angelica Reyes, Senior Director for Freshworks, managing the European and UK regions. I'm super happy to be your host today for the Changemaker series. I think this is the second that we do this month. And I couldn't be happier to host Mr. Derek Rose here. Thank you for accepting. Some might say their guest today has a career in two worlds. Actually, I did a post earlier today in LinkedIn. Probably, yeah, I got curious. Talking about Derek's experience in both water and land, which is true. He's managing digital transformation on both ends, water and land. And we're going to be talking more about that. Derek, you're the group head of IT deputy CIO for V Group. We had the opportunity to do a Changemaker series with you. I think you have an amazing career in IT, and we're going to be talking a little bit more about your path and probably some advice that you can provide to your peers. How are you doing today, Derek?
I'm great. Good to see you. Thanks very much for the invite. Quite excited the opportunity to take a break. Actually, it's really important to take a break from normal day stuff and get the chance to kind of chat with you. So nice to see you again, Angelica. Thank you for the invite.
No, thank you for accepting. So, Derek, we were talking about maybe we can kick it off by talking a little bit more about V Group and all this transformation that you have been managing, digital transformation on both land and water. Maybe you can just give us some insights into what V Group does, and we can talk a little bit more about that journey.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really interesting one for me because I came from kind of land-based work, if you like, so I worked for different organisations, worked in utilities, worked in law enforcement, I've worked in financial services and retail. And the opportunity to kind of come to maritime was kind of new for me. I was a bit nervous at first, to be honest, because I wasn't sure what I was walking into, but more often than not, you know that technology is transferable across different industries. It's how we apply technology and how we build and then experience. And I'll talk quite passionately about the customer experience as we have a chat today, because it's something that I've fundamentally learned over the years in my career. And it's a differentiator between technology and how we deploy technology to different customers. So let me explain a bit about V Group for those of you that don't know who we are and what we do, because it's an unusual name. So V Group we're a global leader in ship management and marine services. And we manage over 1,000 vessels, and I'll talk about the type of vessels we manage in a second to help give you a vision of the environment that we're working in. We have 60 offices across 30 countries, and we manage, deploy, and look after crew, seafarers, to have about 44,500. So it's a large, sizable organisation, global organisation. The type of vessels that we manage and we look after on behalf of our owners, they vary. We have, and if you imagine when you watch the television, you see the industry operating, you see the kind of the bulk containers, the transportation of our goods around the world. We have cargo, we have bulk containers, we have petrol and chemical tankers, but we also have a leisure fleet as well. So we're involved with the cruise industry quite heavily as well, and that's an interesting demographic for us, particularly over the last 18 months when we haven't been able to operate because of COVID. So it presents a slightly different challenges for us, even within the vessel types that we operate. I said before, technology is very similar between land and sea, but the operating environment and the experience that we operate within is very different. So to give you an example, when we work in the office on shore, we take a number of things for granted, particularly if we're looking at cloud solutions. So internet connectivity to the offices is a kind of a given for us. We can all eat. We've got fast internet connection. We can go software as a service. We can go platform as a service, etc. But if I draw a parallel to how we operate an internet connection at sea, it's very different because the providers that we use on shore are not available in the deep sea ocean. So we default to what we call VSAT, which is satellite communication, and that itself has a cost associated with it. So we have to be very clever and very careful about digital transformation and technology deployment when it comes to operating at sea. And not all the vessels that we have are all in the same level of internet connection either. So the ability to deploy software safely and operate and remotely support the vessels can be a challenge for us as well. Operating costs are very important. Margins are really tight in the industry, so for us to be successful as a digital organisation and delivering a world-class digital experience, we need to be sensible with it as well. We've got a fantastic team within V Group. We're all shooting for the same goal, and that's from the onboard crew right up to the CEO and the chairman of the company. And that's unusual, but for me it's very refreshing. So it's an interesting challenge for a technologist for us to actually come up with solutions that are common but deployed differently. If that makes sense.
Completely. Actually, it's an area indeed that I think a lot of us don't. We see it, but we don't necessarily connect to digital transformation. If you see a huge vessel or a platform operating in the middle of the sea, you don't necessarily think about it as okay, what is the digital transformation that's going on around? Let's talk a little bit more about that, especially because you are a huge advocate about IT transformation. You believe that transformation is continuous evolution, that it never ends. What has that journey been like in the last years? Where was the state of the art when you kind of kicked off with this probably 2 years ago working together, and where you are right now?
Yeah, no, it's been an evolution, and I think the best way to look at this is that, and I've seen consistency across a number of my previous organisations about where IT as an organisation or technology or your digital team are how they're viewed within any organisation, and very typically in common to where I was when I came into V Group. The technology team were kind of, and digital team were maybe seen wrongly in some respects as order takers. And the challenge we've got as leaders is to see, how do you move an organisation from being order takers, IT being order takers, to business partners. Technology for me is actually the easy part. I'm going to talk about the people side as well, because transformation for me is very much more about the people and taking the people on a journey and taking the organisation on a journey than actually implementing technology. Technology can enable a really rich experience, and it can give you the tools to make that journey a lot easier and make people's life on a day-to-day basis a lot simpler. And that's really what we're doing to innovate, etc. But for very much, and I speak very passionately about this, and a number of my colleagues will have a smile on their face, current and previous, when I use this phrase, that we must start with the customer experience and we work back to the technology. And that was very much where I was when I joined kind of V Group. But I took a step back and said, okay, what is the experience we're trying to deliver here? We pride ourselves on a flawless service delivery experience. And I learned this kind of customer experience journey from two people actually in my previous career, and they may be watching today, and if they are, I'll say hi. Some of them will be unknown to some of you listening. It's a guy called John Bentley and a guy called Alan White. Both of them I've got a lot of time and respect for. Both are still involved in the industry, work in the UK. John's still in financial services, and Alan works for a technology company, and I'm a good friend with Alan. But they spoke very passionately about, we're going to move on a technology journey, but we need to do that with the people. We need to do that with the organisation. We support people, not IT. And that itself calls upon a very different skill set for me. I've constantly driven my teams over the years to excel in customer service, become easy to do business with, and in essence, create a DNA that's kind of people-centric. So I started with the customer experience. What's the customer experience that we all want to offer as an organisation? and also within my organisation, what's the customer experience we want to deliver. When I stand up in the exec meetings and speak in front of the organisation, I quite often talk about I've got the largest customer base within V Group. And that's very common for many technology organisations. It's not just unique to V Group. My previous organisations, I could argue the same. And what I mean by that is that I provide a service to the staff within the organisation. I give them the tools to do their job, and I give them the environment for them to seek help and learn and develop, as the technology improves or new features arrive. But I also provide a service to our customers, the people that buy services from us. So that's where the largest customer base vision for me comes in. So I have to look at traversing the organisation as a leader. I need to help use my staff to help deliver that experience as well. And what I'm pleased to say, very much down to all the efforts of the staff themselves, we're now sitting at the business partner level, and we've moved away from just transactional, my PC's broken, can you fix it?
And that's a great segue, actually, for the question I would like to deep dive a little bit into. So you're saying business partner, and I think this has been kind of the golden rule we've been talking about for years now. IT needs to be fully aligned with business, strong partnership there. What do you think that strong partnership should look like, and from what you're doing at V Group? And then we'll talk a little bit more about this customer centricity and very people kind of centricity, and a little bit about change management. But let's talk a little bit about that partnership.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's one of the questions I think we talked about prior to today was about the phrase "talking business." And they say that's a new golden rule for CIOs. And in essence, I do agree with that. It's a nice catchphrase. But business is a service, of some sort, no matter the industry that we actually are involved in. So I always say, think supplier. We service the company that we work in. We provide a service, as I said earlier, as an IT department to our customers, and we have the largest customer base. So there's probably four things that I kind of look at when we look at being a business partner, if you like. So number one, the business strategy, right, is to keep the company operating efficiently. Right? That's any role of the CIO or any role of the organisation. We need to keep the company moving and operating. And that was more challenging over the past 18 months because we all ended up working from home. So the adoption of technology increased tenfold overnight because we've jumped on Zoom, we jumped on Microsoft Teams, Google Meet, there's a number of technology there, but that working environment changed overnight for us. So we needed to quickly come up with a way of operating efficiently. And while we're working from home, how do we remain easy to do business with, to get our day-to-day work done, procurement, need some help, all that kind of stuff. So there was a number of things. That was number one. Number two was innovate to deliver a unique selling point or experience. So first 6 months of COVID was, let's just steady the ship, to use a phrase. Let's just make sure we're stable and we can operate and we're actually okay working from home. And then how do we innovate? How do we then change within our new working environment? So service industry is really hard because it's a common service. It's about the people that deliver it. So it's about giving the people the opportunity to innovate and deliver a better service. So that becomes a unique selling point. That's why I would go to V Group versus another organisation, because we deliver a flawless service delivery. Very importantly, number three is keeping cyber safe. It's a very, very real issue for us as technologists and leaders. So we have to remain cyber safe. But how do we do that? We're working from home. How do we do that in a vessel? So that's number three. We need to make sure that from a business point of view, we partner on. And then number four is providing a flawless service delivery. We pride ourselves as an organisation on flawless service delivery. And I encourage that through any organisation I've worked with. So you can see that a lot of what I've talked about is not talking about technology solutions here. It's about how we offer ourselves up as a service to our customers and to ourselves. We use technology to make it easier. We use technology to communicate. And that was a mind shift for a lot of the staff that I'm working with here just now, and I'm pleased to say they're really, really fantastic at it now. We've got a really customer-centric organisation, which is great. It's great to see.
That's great. I noted that those 4 points we're probably going to be picking on that for our next discussions with other leaders. Yesterday when preparing, we were talking about something that's key and sometimes big, makes that huge difference between the projects that succeed and those that not, and it's properly managing that change management. And I'm curious, when you're talking about populations that are not necessarily, at least the ones we think are the most exposed to digital transformation, how do you manage that change and introduced by digital transformation within this population specifically? Or
yeah, it's a good question. So a lot of the time it's about adoption, all right, and I'll talk about giving your organisations the capacity to deliver change, but also to adopt change. And that was one thing that we looked at when we were trying to bring in the tools to give us a rich experience to enable us to do business with, right? So we talk about demands on the IT teams over the years. It's kind of reached unprecedented levels, right? Because and heightened more because we're working from home, and people deliver change. Technology doesn't deliver change. So a lot of it's around stress and anxiety and avoiding kind of burnout. And I think it's important that we as leaders, we recognise that within ourselves, but also recognise it within our staff, and particularly if you're not dealing with your staff physically face to face every day. We've got a remote operating environment, so it's recognising the signs of that. And if you build capacity within your team to actually, breathe and actually have the capacity to deliver technology change, then you'll get more out of them. But if you then deliver the experience properly to the consumers, which is your staff, or to your customers, then you're in a much better place to deliver it. So, over the past 18, I'll go back to over the past 18 months, right? Burnout was a potentially a big issue for me, and it was also for my colleagues and other organisations that I was still in touch with. It left staff sometimes feeling hopeless, maybe cynical, resentful. Low in energy and productivity. I mean, you've got low energy and low productivity, you can't deliver change. And eventually, they might not feel like they're productive anymore, or they've got nothing more to contribute. So what I did do was, I've got another 4 things that I tried to invest into my teams and also encourage people to think about, was about how do you cope with that? Because then that'll give you the ability to deliver change more effectively. So number 1, leave it behind the office, and it's actually have a break. So anything that happens in the office, leave it behind in the office. And again, that's very hard because our office sometimes is our home as well, and the lines blur very, very, very quickly when it comes to splitting your home life and actually being in the office. Have a hobby was another thing that we spoke about quite passionately within the organisation, to the staff, to say, like, it's good to have a hobby because it breaks your mind, and I have a hobby as well. I can talk about that in a second. Number 3 is knowing where to draw the line, and that's really important. You need to know your boundaries, and you need to know the boundaries of the organisation's ability to cope with change, and we address that as well. And then this is also something that's not commonly accepted, but I always encourage it, is acknowledge it's actually okay not to be perfect. And what I mean by that is technologists, we are perfectionists, and we're highly driven, and they're very gifted individuals. But getting the job done perfectly each time is not really everything, in my opinion. And there's a direct correlation, I think, between perfectionism and high rates of burnout, and levels of stress. And it's something that I believe now that a lot of organisations are starting to look at and address, and have a lot of empathy around recognising those signs within their staff. We're, as perfectionists, we kind of subject ourselves quite a lot to kind of self-criticism, and we try and drive our own personal standards up really, really high. That's just who we are, because that's what drives us. That's our DNA. But that can often lead to the downside of burnout as well. So I think there's a balance to be struck, and we did strike that balance really well. And sometimes just a sense check when you see somebody within your organisation running really, really hard because they care and they're passionate about what they're doing and they want to make a good job. Just sometimes a kind of a friendly tap on the shoulder to say, slow down. You know, you don't need to run as fast, and that just gives people 3-4 seconds to breathe and take a step back. So I encourage that quite a lot within the organisation, and I had to do more of it, particularly around the COVID times as well, because I wasn't able to put that physical hand on the shoulder. So it's something that it's very important. If you get it right, then you're in a very, very good place to actually drive forward that pace.
Completely. And I think to your end, leadership is so important that you embrace, and I love that rule of 4 again, that you embrace those principles to ensure that they're going all the way down through the organization. And I think this management with empathy is something that is probably here to stay. I think that COVID probably helps us see the world differently and really ensuring that you're building those boundaries is so important to protect yourself. And I think it's part of the leader's responsibility to ensure that you're facilitating for this and that you're leading with empathy to achieve those means. And talk about leadership. How do you groom that next level of IT leadership? There is probably, I always think about the CIO function as being so tough, because not only you have to be fully aligned with the business, but you have to be on top of what's happening in the IT industry that's changing every day, constant innovation. You have to keep up with that pace. You have to bring that innovation into your area. What's your advice to that new leaders and your peers?
Yeah, and it's so first of all, we need to know our technology, we need to know our environment, and I think we're problem solvers as leaders within organisations. We look for the gaps, and we look to say, I can plug that gap with either a technology or a process or even just a mindset change or a cultural change, because that will then ultimately benefit the organisation. It's a team game as being a leader, all right? And the first thing I did was I looked for a mentor. You know, I looked for somebody that I could work with safely and securely and discuss the experiences that I'm just about to enter into, or maybe experiences I've had that I wasn't quite sure what the reaction was, or what the action could be. And another analogy I use is Newton's law. For every action, there's an equal opposite reaction. So we're going to make a change. So you need to think about what's the likely outcomes of that change without blindly going into just doing it. And that's why I always say start with the experience. Start with the experience and work back to the technology. You know, I've had so many questions and requests over the years where somebody comes to me and says, I want to deploy this technology. And in my youth, I used to run around and go, oh, yeah, okay, no problem. So you deploy the technology and then you try and figure out what the experience is, and you're trying to force an organisation into a technology that's not going to deliver the experience. So that builds frustration, and then it builds resentment, and user adoption becomes really, really hard. So starting with the user experience and working back to technology is a method that's really worked quite well for me. And again, that's something that I've learned by speaking to likes of Alan and John, who were my mentors in my early days, you know, and I still have regular chats with them about, their experiences versus my experiences. So I would find a mentor and get somebody to try and push you and achieve yourself, your team, the company that you're working for as well, and ultimately help them with the experience for your customer, because that's why we're there to generate a good experience, which generates revenue for organisations. So it's a team game. And I'll go back to my list. I've got another list for you as well. So there's 4 things I've got in my head that potentially you need to consider as a leader. Is one, you're only as good as your team, and that's really, really fundamental for me. You need to work hard to get the best out of your team. You need to communicate well. Empathy was a topic that we just spoke about. You need to have empathy. You need to listen, in my opinion, and fundamentally remain balanced. Yeah, and ensure your team remain balanced. And that's where, if you've got that roundedness to help support your team, you'll get the best out of your team. 2, know your team's capabilities and know the desired experience. Again, customer experience. Work back to technology. That's really important. I've always found, and I always say this to my own kids and people that work for me and I work with, remain grounded in your roots. Remember back to the days when you were walking in the shoes of your own team, and what did that feel like? Learn from that and then build your own way of working. So I took bits of the people that I worked with over the years, the good and the bad, and I said, I'm going to mould that and I'm going to become that best and give the best for my team and who I'm working with. So remain grounded in your roots would be number 3. And then finally, number 4, celebrate success with your team at all times. I talked right at the top of the call, you mentioned right at the top of the call, digital transformation is an evolution. It's never ending. There's things that happen, there's milestones within that digital transformation. So it must get closure on certain successes and celebrate those successes, because that gives people a sense of achievement. It gives a sense of closure, and it gives, yes, that's good, and it gives you energy to move forward to the next task in hand. And a very, very small thing that I learned over the years, even just a small thank you. A small thank you goes a long, long way in recognition to say to people you've had a good job. So I would say that's probably the 4 things that may be worth passing over on advice that I've certainly learned over the years. And if you get them right and you implement them, we'll make mistakes, absolutely. Learn from the mistakes and then adapt and deliver again. And you'll be a fantastic change maker. Everybody delivers change every day. We maybe just don't always recognise that.
I love it. I think that's not only applicable for a CIO, but any leader should embrace this 4 rules, or whatever we want to call it. I love you saying not technology for the sake of technology, really always keeping the user in mind and that user experience. And talking about your advice to leaders, I love you're only as good as your team. I just love that. Yeah. I'm taking that one with me. Customer experience again. I love the remember your roots. Sometimes people just forget, okay, what is really to be in the shoes of the customer or the user. And I think that's super important from a management perspective. And of course, that celebrating your successes and that small thank yous and still things that we cannot forget as leaders. Just love it. And I think it's a great time of the year to kind of look back and look forward and think about the great things ahead, but also the things that we can do better. And I think this is great advice, Derek. So I think that we're pretty much at the top of the hour. We're kicking off hopefully what's going to be a wonderful 2022. You're getting ready for your holidays, Derek.
Yep.
All ready, all set?
Yeah, I think everybody's ready. I'm pretty sure everybody watching as well, they're ready for a break, recharge, and that goes back to the burnout discussion we had. Take the time, have a fantastic time with the family. It's really important, and then I think we move into 2022 and off we go, which is great. Really excited for it, and I think everybody will do some great things if they focus on the right topics. So looking forward to it. Have a great Christmas.
I hope that we can catch up in 2022 for you telling us how things are going in land and water. Sure. Great chat, Derek. Thank you so much. I think there's a lot of takeaways from this conversation. I hope that the audience there enjoyed it as much as I did. Have a wonderful holiday season to you, your family, and to everyone who's watching us. Thank you so much. And stay tuned for the change makers. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Have a good one. Thank you.
Bye, Derek. Thank you.